We're with a filmmaker who doesn't go by boundaries, titles, genres. She doesn't like to be kept in a box. She's broken out of the box once again with a gangster film. I'm with Deepa Mehta at the Toronto International Film Festival. Thank you so much for being with us, Deepa.
My pleasure. I like filmy cafe, so it's cool.
It's cool. What made this film so cool? What was the impetus for you to make Beeba Boys? What?
I think that all my films come from, uh, are inspired by a story. So I think it was a story, not I think, I know it was the story of a gang which is inspired by true life gangsters in the West Coast that have a brotherhood of sorts and whose mantra, if you will, is power, money, respect, style. That's what they're about. And the thought of these young men who take up the life of crime, which they do, and what their trajectory is, what the arc is, what they go through, why they do it, and how it ends up, really fascinated me.
Now you're returning to writing on this film. You've written the screenplay. Does that make you more invested in the film? Does that make you understand their arcs better? Tell me about that. Returning to writing the screenplay, and how that works as being a director. How does that affect?
For me, it's slightly different, obviously. I mean, for Midnight's Children, Salman Rushdie wrote the screenplay, and we worked on it together. But I think it's not. I think I know it's Salman's screenplay, but because we were involved in it in every aspect of it, when he finished the screenplay, I put it aside, and I sort of put on my director's hat. And it's similar to when you write. When I wrote Beeba Boys, I didn't look at the script for about 2 months. I just forgot all about it, and then somehow psychologically you put on your director's hat and you open it, and then instead of words you see images, and I think that's what's different.
Was making this film almost, was it invigorating for you? Was it stimulating? Because this is a new genre you're exploring. So as you're going along, you're exploring and discovering new things. So how was that process for you?
Thematically, Beaver Boys is not very different from any of my other films. My main concerns, I think, and always have been about identity, have been about belonging, have been about assimilation, have been about immigration, and that is reflected in Beaver Boys completely. It's about a group of gangsters who want to belong, who want to be seen, and it's about assimilation. They want to be assimilated, and in order to be assimilated, what extent or how far will they go? So in that sense, thematically, it's very similar. The story is different. So the genre is different. It's not a drama, it's a gangster genre. I think that I just loved it because as a director, unless I'm exploring a different territory, for me, water was a different territory. I didn't know anything about really what transpires in the House of Widows. I learned so much by reading, by spending time with them in Vrindavan. I didn't know anything about except about domestic violence, really in a very physical and in a very uh, different manner till I really got into the film. And it's the same thing, but I didn't know anything about gangsters. If you learn something new, if you explore something, if you walk into a territory that is unknown, that's really exciting. So for me, this was very exciting because I learned something.
Right. You just mentioned this and touched upon it, that exploring the immigrant experience has been a major part of most of your films. What did you discover about the immigrant experience in this film? What comment does it make about the immigrant experience?
The immigrant experience in Beaver Boys is slightly different. I mean, every experience is different, but this is it's these guys are Canadians, and they're second or third generation Canadians. But the point is, they're still called immigrants. That has a lot to do with everything, doesn't it? That okay, so if you're not white, if you're second or third generation, you're still an immigrant. You're perceived as somebody who has not become a Canadian. That's what the film is about. And these guys saying, we are Canadians.
Yeah.
That's what the film is about.
What made you zone in? We're talking about Canadian gangsters, and Randeep is Jeet in the film. What made you zone in on Randeep as being the leader of the Beeba Boys?
Well, it's after you write the script, then you start thinking of the casting as a director. And my mother reads all my scripts. I give them to her, and she lives in Delhi. So I had given, and I was looking for Ajit, and she suggested Randeep, and I said Randeep, and I'd seen him in Highway, and I'd seen him in Monsoon Wedding, and I think he's terrific, but I just didn't see him as Jeet. She said, no, see this film. It's called Once Upon a Time in Mumbai, and I saw it, and I think he's in the film for like 10 minutes, and he steals the film. I don't remember anything else about the film except Randeep's character. It's his eyes. He says little, and I wanted that commanding presence. So I was lucky. I mean, I sent him the script. He loved it, and he agreed to do it. And I thank my mom. There you
Moms
go.
are always right.
Yeah, mom's always right. What can you do?
Right. Why do you feel, Deepa, there is such a vacuum in the mainstream national media? Because this is a film that is commenting on what has happened in Vancouver, what is still happening in Vancouver. It's a very well-versed thing in Vancouver. They know about this problem. It's in their backyard. Why is it missing from the mainstream and the national media? What this issue, because there is such a strong Indo-Canadian community in Toronto, across the GTA. Why is it missing from the national press?
Well, maybe it was waiting for the Beeba boys to come out. I mean, really. Sometimes it needs, what I feel is that a film cannot change the way people think, but it can start a dialogue. I mean, I remember years ago when I did a film called Fire, and somebody asked me that, why did you do a film about lesbians? Because there are no lesbians in India. So it's like, okay, wait a minute. Hello. And yeah, exactly. So it's the same thing. It's like, why are you doing a film but when there are no Indian gangsters? I mean, I think it's our responsibility. I didn't do a film in order to glamorize the life, but it's a reality. And hopefully we can start a dialogue, and instead of in every immigrant community, it's not just ours, whether it's Irish or whether it's Italian or whether it's the Japanese or whether it's the triads or whatever, there have been gangsters. But I think that we are just a part of the stream. But every immigrant community doesn't want to talk about something that's a negative aspect of their community, because we want to be accepted so much by the white folks. That's the reality of our lives. I think maybe it's a colonial background or what it is, but I think it's time that we acknowledge that we can be confident enough to deal with the issue, not sweep it under the carpet. Let's talk about it. Let's help these guys. But nobody can help anybody, or if you don't even acknowledge that it exists. I think it's our responsibility. And also it's the responsibility of the wider community, of the dominant community, to say, this is a problem. Why don't I know? I mean, somebody in the mainstream press said, we have no idea. But we thought that all Sikhs were cab drivers. I mean, this is, so either we are terrorists, or we're cab drivers, or we do Bollywood dancing. There's nothing in between. So that kind of, whether it's negative, negative role models, I'm not saying there's anything good about that, but we have to give ourselves some complexity.
How do you feel since you started making films, since your first film? How has the landscape changed for South Asian storytell on film in the mainstream? How has it evolved? Has it changed? Has it gone back, forward?
It's changed a bit. I mean, there's much more awareness now. When I made Sam and Me, which was my first film, and it's also about immigrants, and it's all about. I mean, I think of this as my male immigrant trilogy, which is Sam and Me was about a group of guys who live in a rooming house together. This is about a group of gangsters that are are psychopaths, and my next film is also about guys. And the thing is that I think that the landscape's changed a bit, but not hugely. We don't. Canadians we become, in fact, increasingly politically correct, and I don't think that that's a good thing. And and especially now, the atmosphere is so weird, where we do not call. There's the big fear of calling somebody, calling on somebody for something if they're colored, because that's not politically correct thing to do. And so there's that, and there's an anathema of our own community saying everything's fine. So there's this atmosphere which is very unreal. And I think that that has always existed, and I think it's become worse.
What's the thought, Deepa, coming back to Beeba Boys, behind the name Beeba Boys for this gangster story tell of basically bad guys? What's the thought? I found it funny when I heard it first. Yeah, tell me about that.
Well, it's ironic in a way because I mean, when I was doing the research, I met one of the mothers of the gangsters in Vancouver, and you know I speak Punjabi. And I grew up in Amritsar and stuff, so I asked her. She was talking about. She says, you know, whatever happens, so mere te, I'll translate it in English for you. She says, mera te Biba putt hai. He's my good son, and I don't know why they're giving him so many problems. There was, and it's sad because she knew exactly what he did. I mean, they were living in a middle lower class locality in Vancouver, but there was a Lamborghini in their driveway with a stretched Lexus. You know, where does that money come from?
Right.
I said, what does he do? And she says he's an export import. So, you know, she's right, you know. He imports marijuana and he exports arms. You know,
Politically correct.
very politically correct. But she's kept on saying, but aite Biba put hai. Mera Biba put hai. And she meant it. You know, he might be a gangster, he might be dealing in cocaine and marijuana, but he's a good son. And therefore, he's my Biba put. So it's ironic, you know.
Well, there's nothing ironic about Beeba Boys. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for making time for Filmy Cafe. It's always a pleasure. We look forward to Beeba Boys and everything that you do going forward as well, Deepa. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with you guys. Thank you.